You think you belong here? The billionaire's words sliced through the auditorium. Elon Wright, tech mogul, major donor, and self-proclaimed talent expert, never imagined a high school girl would shatter his reputation in front of 1,000 witnesses. He handed her the microphone as a joke. She took it as opportunity. His smirk vanished in seconds. Industry executives leaned forward. Cameras rolled. One voice. One moment. One irreversible shift in power. What happened that night in Los Angeles wasn't just about a talent show. It exposed the raw difference between purchased privilege and earned respect. The girl he dismissed as a diversity inclusion transformed his mockery into her launch pad. The silence after her final note told the story. Money couldn't buy what she possessed naturally. Nobody expected what followed when the applause finally erupted, least of all Elon Wright. What happens when authentic talent confronts arrogant wealth? West Valley Arts Academy stood like a fortress of privilege in the hills above Los Angeles. Its modern glass buildings and manicured grounds served as a daily reminder to Aaliyah Johnson that she existed in two worlds simultaneously. The scholarship student from South LA navigated hallways where Gucci backpacks and casual references to family Aspen getaways were the norm. Her worn JanSport and weekend shifts at her aunt's hair salon marked her as different. Aaliyah slipped through the crowded corridor, dodging elbows and avoiding eye contact with Cameron Wright's circle near the performance hall. They occupied the center of the hallway like they owned it, which, considering the Wright family's substantial donations to the Academy, wasn't entirely untrue. "Did you hear about the talent show judges?" A girl with perfect highlights tossed the words over her shoulder, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Cameron's dad is the special guest. Actual billionaire Elon Wright. My dad says he's the most brutally honest person in tech," Cameron added, leaning against a row of lockers. "He can smell fake talent a mile away." Aaliyah pressed her notebook tighter against her chest. Inside were lyrics she'd worked on for months, songs born from late nights and early mornings, crafted between homework and her job. Songs nobody at West Valley had heard. Music had been her sanctuary since childhood. Her grandmother's old records, Aretha, Nina, Lauryn Hill, shaped her understanding of what voices could do, how they could tell stories that transcended circumstance. In her tiny bedroom with its thin walls, she'd taught herself to sing, to write, to transform her experiences into something that soared. "You signing up for the talent show?" Darius, one of her few friends at school, caught up with her at her locker. "I don't know." Aaliyah shrugged, though the application form was already tucked into her chemistry textbook. "It's not exactly designed for people like me." "You mean insanely talented people who could wipe the floor with these trust fund karaoke singers?" Darius raised an eyebrow. "You know what I mean." Aaliyah closed her locker quietly. "Besides, with Elon Wright judging?" The man who told last year's runner-up she should consider a career that doesn't involve being seen or heard? The talent show wasn't just another high school competition. West Valley's industry connections meant agents, producers, and label scouts filled the audience each year. Past winners had landed recording contracts, Broadway auditions, film roles. For students with wealthy parents, it was one opportunity among many. For Aaliyah, it might be the only door that opened. Miss Morris, the music teacher who had advocated for Aaliyah's scholarship, appeared beside them. "Application deadline is today. Just saying." She slid a flyer onto Aaliyah's notebook. "That voice of yours deserves to be heard." After Ms. Morris walked away, Darius nudged her. "See? Even the teachers know." Aaliyah had never performed her original music publicly. Her compositions lived in her headphones, in private moments when the practice rooms were empty after school. But the first-place prize included studio-time professional recording hours that she could never afford otherwise. Later that day, she slipped her application into the submission box, heart hammering against her ribs. The list of finalists appeared on the digital board a week later. Students clustered around it, phones out, reactions ranging from celebration to theatrical disappointment. Cameron Wright stood at the center, accepting congratulations like royalty receiving tribute. Aaliyah hung back, scanning the names from a distance. "You're on there," Darius whispered, appearing at her elbow. "7th slot." Her stomach dropped. Her name, in digital letters, among the 15 finalists. Real. Happening. "What are you performing?" someone asked, and Aaliyah turned to find Zoe, Cameron's girlfriend, studying her with narrowed eyes. "An original," Aaliyah replied, the words feeling strange in her mouth. "Bold choice," Zoe said, not unkindly. "Especially with Mr. Wright judging. He's not exactly gentle with criticism." The weeks before the show blurred into a rhythm of rehearsal, work, and doubt. Aaliyah practiced everywhere, humming quietly during bus rides, writing lyrics between classes, singing full voice only in the empty music room after everyone had gone home. Miss Morris offered occasional guidance, but mostly just listened, a small smile playing at her lips. "You've got something rare," she told Aaliyah after one rehearsal. "Something you can't learn at Juilliard or buy with private coaching." "Will that matter?" Aaliyah asked, thinking of Cameron's professional backing track and choreographer. "To the right ears?" "It's the only thing that matters." The night before the show, Aaliyah sat on her bed, phone open to a video of Aaliyah Wright dismantling a startup founder on a business reality show. His precision was surgical, his enjoyment obvious. "You know what the difference is between confidence and delusion?" he asked the shaken contestant. "Talent, which you demonstrably lack." The man had built his reputation on being brutally honest, a phrase Aaliyah had come to recognize as code for cruelty without consequences. What would he say about her song? About her? Her grandmother knocked softly before entering with a mug of tea. "You still up, baby girl?" "Just nervous about tomorrow," Aaliyah admitted. Grandma Rose sat beside her, the bed creaking slightly. "Your mother had a voice that could make angels jealous. First time she sang solo in church, she was so scared she almost ran out the door." She patted Aaliyah's hand. "But she didn't. And neither will you." "The judge is this famous billionaire who—" "Rich folks put their pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else," Grandma Rose interrupted. "Don't you give them power they haven't earned." The talent show evening arrived with the electric anticipation of potential turning points. The auditorium filled with students, parents, faculty, and scattered throughout. The industry professionals everyone pretended not to notice. Backstage, performers ran through routines, checked makeup, adjusted costumes. Cameron Wright occupied the prime dressing area, surrounded by friends doubling as an entourage. Aaliyah found a quiet corner, just her and her lyrics, going through her breathing exercises. The song felt both intensely personal and somehow separate from her now, like a living thing she'd nurtured that would soon have to stand on its own. A commotion near the stage door drew everyone's attention. Aaliyah Wright had arrived, flanked by assistants and school administrators who fluttered around him like anxious birds. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who had never had to question his right to occupy space. "Dad!" Cameron broke away from his group, exchanging a back-slapping embrace with his father. Elon surveyed the backstage area, his gaze clinical. "Quite the production you've got here, son." "Better be worth missing my Tokyo call." His eyes found Aaliyah in her corner, lingered for a moment on her simple black dress and worn boots, then moved on without acknowledgement. She was invisible furniture, background. The realization should have hurt, but instead, it steeled something in her. She would be seen tonight. She would be heard. The show began with a dance troupe, followed by a classical pianist, a stand-up comedian whose family connections were more impressive than his punchlines, and a surprisingly good rock band. Cameron performed sixth, his professionally arranged pop cover earning enthusiastic applause, particularly from the front rows where Elon sat with the other judges. And then, it was her turn. Aaliyah walked onto the stage, the spotlight simultaneously blinding and exposing. The microphone stand waited at center stage. No props, no backdrop, no distractions. She adjusted the microphone height, conscious of the silence stretching awkwardly. From the front row, she heard a theatrical sigh. Could we possibly move things along? Elon Wright's voice carried without effort. Some of us have actual businesses to run. Nervous laughter rippled through the audience. The head judge, a local radio personality, leaned toward his microphone. Please introduce yourself and your performance. I'm Aaliyah Johnson, she said, her voice initially soft before she corrected it. I'll be performing an original song called Unwritten. Original? Elon Wright interrupted again, eyebrows raised in exaggerated surprise. Well, that's ambitious. Let me guess. Sweetheart, something gospel-inspired? That's what you people usually excel at, right? The auditorium temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Some audience members shifted uncomfortably. Others pretended to check their phones. Cameron and his friends exchanged glances, half embarrassed, half amused. Aaliyah's fingers tightened around the microphone stand. The familiar pressure built in her chest, the pressure of words unspoken, of dignity maintained at personal cost, of anger transformed into something else because it had to be. The spotlight felt suddenly heavier, hotter, like judgment itself concentrated into a beam of light. What Elon Wright didn't know, what none of them knew, was how many times she had already been underestimated, dismissed, confined by others' limited imagination. What he didn't know was that every such moment had become fuel. Little did he know who he had just handed a microphone to. Elon Wright leaned back in his judge's chair, legs crossed casually, the picture of a man accustomed to controlling rooms. I'm just saying, know your lane. My foundation funds several excellent gospel choirs in underprivileged areas. He gestured vaguely toward Aaliyah. Tremendous cultural tradition there. The radio host judge cleared his throat. Mr. Wright, perhaps we should— No, I'm genuinely curious. Wright's smile didn't reach his eyes. Did you write this yourself? Or did you have assistance? Aaliyah stood perfectly still, the microphone a cold weight in her hand. The question hung in the air, its implication clear to everyone. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, some embarrassed, some curious, some secretly pleased at her discomfort. I wrote it myself, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Impressive. Most students here have coaches, producers. Wright glanced meaningfully at his son in the wings. Though sometimes even that isn't enough. Cameron's friends snickered, but Cameron himself looked suddenly uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to another. In the third row, miss. Morris sat forward in her seat, her posture rigid with tension. Beside her, Darius mouthed something that looked like, "You've got this." Well, let's hear it then, Wright continued. Though if you're open to suggestions, perhaps something more accessible? A cover of a popular song might be safer for someone at your— He paused deliberately. Experience level. The microphone trembled slightly in Aaliyah's hand, but not from fear. Something was building inside her, not just anger, but a clarity she hadn't expected. This moment suddenly felt familiar, as though she'd rehearsed it alongside her song. The piece is personal, Mr. Wright, she said. It's about finding your voice when others have decided what it should sound like. A ripple of murmurs crossed the auditorium. Wright's expression flickered between surprise and annoyance at being directly addressed. Bold, he said, recovering quickly. I appreciate confidence when it's earned. He made a show of checking his watch. Tell you what, I'll make this interesting. I'll personally add $1,000 to the first-place prize if you actually impress anyone tonight. More murmurs, louder this time. The other judges exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with this departure from protocol. But no one challenged him. Of course they didn't. The sound engineer in the booth gave Aaliyah a thumbs up, indicating her backing track was ready. Just a simple piano accompaniment she'd recorded in the school's music room, nothing like the professional productions other contestants had. Aaliyah closed her eyes for 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3, then opened them with something new in her gaze. She thought of her grandmother's words. Rich folks put their pants on one leg at a time. Don't give them power they haven't earned. $1,000? She stepped closer to the microphone, her voice clear now. Sir, I'm not here for your money. I'm here for something you can't buy. The audience held their collective breath. No one spoke to Elon Wright that way. Not competitors, not business partners, certainly not high school students. In the front row, Wright's relaxed posture stiffened. The amused smile remained fixed on his face, but a flush crept up his neck. From the wings, Cameron stared at Aaliyah with new attention, his usual dismissive expression replaced by uncertainty. For a split second, Aaliyah questioned everything, her song choice, her presence on this stage, the risk she was taking. Her future at the academy could depend on this moment. Scholarships could be influenced by powerful donors. Opportunities could vanish. But beneath those fears ran a deeper current, the knowledge that some prices were too high to pay, pretending to be less to make others comfortable, accepting disrespect as the cost of inclusion, playing roles written by people who couldn't see her clearly. The music teacher in row 7 gave an almost imperceptible nod. Aaliyah adjusted her grip on the microphone, took a breath, and nodded to the sound booth. The simple piano introduction began, each note clear and intentional in the hushed auditorium. What Elon Wright didn't know was that he had just made the biggest mistake of his public life. What none of them knew was that everything was about to change. She lifted the microphone and began to sing. Wait! Elon Wright held up his hand before Aaliyah could sing her first note. The piano track continued for several awkward measures before the sound engineer cut it off. Before we waste everyone's time, I'm curious, what exactly is this song about? The interruption was calculated, designed to throw her off balance. Aaliyah's carefully constructed momentum faltered as the audience shifted uncomfortably. It's about finding strength in silence, she answered, the irony of his interruption not lost on her. Silence? That's an odd theme for a singing competition. Wright's laugh invited others to join in, a few obliged, mostly from Cameron's section. Wouldn't you rather perform something with more universal appeal? Perhaps something by Beyoncé? I understand she's very popular with... The song is my own. Mr. Wright, Aaliyah's voice remained level. If you'll allow me to perform it. Of course, of course. He waved his hand magnanimously. Though I should warn you, the industry professionals here aren't looking for amateur compositions. They want commercially viable talent. The radio host judge leaned into his microphone. Perhaps we should let the contestant perform, Elon. Just offering career advice, Wright replied without looking at his fellow judge. That's why I'm here, isn't it? To share my expertise? He turned his attention back to Aaliyah. I've launched careers and ended them. I know what works. Blood rushed to Aaliyah's ears. The spotlight felt hotter, more exposing. She could walk off now, preserve what dignity remained, avoid further humiliation. No one would blame her. You know, Wright continued, warming to his role, my foundation provides mentorship to underprivileged youth interested in business. Much more practical than music. The entertainment industry can be unreceptive to certain backgrounds without the right connections. Several audience members looked down at their programs. Others checked their phones, creating the illusion of distraction from the uncomfortable spectacle. But no one intervened. Cameron's initial discomfort had given way to visible enjoyment. He whispered something to Zoe, who giggled behind her hand. Wright checked his watch again, the gesture deliberate and showy. We're running behind schedule. Perhaps you could just give us a shortened version? 30 seconds or so? Aaliyah felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the compression of anger into something smaller, denser, more controlled. It was a feeling she knew intimately from years of similar moments, large and small. The teacher who expressed surprise at her vocabulary. The security guard who followed her through stores. The countless times she'd swallowed responses to protect others' comfort. But tonight was different. Tonight, she had a microphone. "Mr. Right," she said, her voice finding new strength. "You've interrupted me twice now. You've questioned my abilities, my background, and my choices. You've suggested I should perform someone else's music instead of my own." She paused, conscious of the growing tension in the room. "I wonder if you've extended the same guidance to the other contestants tonight." A soft murmur rippled through the audience. On stage, under intense lighting, Aaliyah couldn't see most faces clearly, but she could feel the shift, the realization spreading that something unprecedented was happening. Wright's easy smile tightened. "I'm only trying to help you avoid embarrassment, Miss Johnson. But by all means, proceed with your original plan. It's your moment to waste." From the wings, Cameron was no longer smiling. His father was supposed to be impressing everyone with his business acumen and industry connections, not creating a scene with a scholarship student. "I appreciate your concern," Aaliyah replied. "But I'd rather fail authentically than succeed by pretending to be something I'm not." Wright's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She had refused to play the role he'd assigned her grateful recipient of his wisdom, deferential to his authority. "Fine words," he said, his tone hardening. "Let's see if your talent matches your confidence." He turned to the other judges. "I suggest we score this performance with particular attention to technical merit, given the contestants' strong opinions." The implied threat hung in the air. The other judges would understand their expected role align with the powerful donor or risk consequences. Aaliyah stood frozen in the spotlight, the weight of what she'd done settling on her shoulders. She had spoken back to Elon Wright in front of his son, his peers, and a room full of witnesses. Whatever happened next, there would be no returning to invisibility. "In the audience, miss." Morris's expression remained carefully neutral, but her eyes conveyed a complex message, pride mixed with concern. Near the back, a woman Aaliyah didn't recognize was recording the interaction on her phone, her professional attire suggesting she wasn't just another parent. "One last thing," Wright said, leaning back in his chair with renewed casualness. "That $1,000 offer? I'm doubling it. $2,000 if you genuinely impress this audience." His smile returned, sharp at the edges. "Consider it motivation." The offer wasn't generosity. It was another attempt to establish control, to reframe her as a charity case performing for his approval and financial reward. Aaliyah's fingers tightened around the microphone. The persistent weight of others' expectations, their assumptions, their limitations, their conditions pressed against her chest. The familiar pressure to shrink, to accommodate, to make herself smaller and less threatening. She closed her eyes for 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3, then opened them with renewed resolve. "I don't want your money, mister." "Right," she said quietly, each word distinct. "I just want 3 minutes to sing without interruption. Can you give me that?" The famous producer, sitting 2 seats away from Wright, leaned forward with newfound interest. The radio host raised his eyebrows, and in the wings, Cameron Wright stared at Aaliyah with an expression that had transformed from amusement to something approaching respect. She nodded to the sound booth again. The simple piano introduction began once more. This time, no one interrupted. The opening notes of the piano track filled the auditorium's simple, deliberate chords that established a rhythm without overshadowing what would come next. Aaliyah stood motionless for 4 measures, letting the music create space, letting the moment breathe. When she finally sang, her first notes emerged soft and clear, almost conversational. They say stay quiet, stay small, draw inside all the lines. Don't take up too much space at all. Let them tell you who you are. Her voice carried a hint of vulnerability, an intimate quality that drew listeners closer. Not the polished, overproduced sound of the previous performances, but something more honest, textured with real emotion and subtle control. Elon Wright's expression remained skeptical, one eyebrow slightly raised. He glanced at his fellow judges, expecting to find shared amusement. Instead, he found them leaning forward, attentive. Words like walls all around. Built by hands, not my own, can't see out, can't be found behind names I've never chosen. Aaliyah's eyes remained open, but her focus shifted inward as she connected more deeply with the lyrics. Her right hand lifted slightly from the microphone, a small gesture that seemed to pull the notes from somewhere deeper. In the wings, Cameron's friends had stopped whispering. Zoe watched with narrowed eyes, her expression complicated. Darius, in the audience, sat perfectly still, a smile growing at the corners of his mouth. He'd heard Aaliyah sing before, but never like this, never with such unguarded intensity. As she moved into the pre-chorus, her voice began to reveal more of its range, climbing higher with controlled power, but there's a voice they can't contain a truth they'll never own. Some songs refuse to remain unwritten, unknown. The chorus arrived with an unexpected shift, her voice opening fully, revealing colors and textures that transformed the simple backing track into something much larger. I am more than your assumptions, more than names you give to me. I am voice. I am vision. I am all you'll never see. I am writing. My own story now, pages you don't get to hold. I am fire. I am freedom. I am breaking from your mold. By the final line of the chorus, Aaliyah's voice soared into a controlled belt that filled every corner of the auditorium. The technical skill was immediately apparent, perfect pitch, precise control, effortless power, but it was the emotional authenticity that silenced the room. The woman in the back had stopped recording with her phone, her hand suspended midair as she simply listened. In the judges' row, the famous producer had closed his eyes, his head moving slightly with the music. Elon Wright's smug expression had frozen, his cognitive dissonance visible as he struggled to reconcile his assumptions with the undeniable evidence before him. By the second chorus, even Wright had stopped checking his phone. Aaliyah moved into the second verse, bringing the dynamics back down, creating intimacy again. They mistake silence for weakness, confuse quiet with consent, never knowing in that stillness is where strength has always been. Her eyes found Miss Morris in the audience, a moment of silent acknowledgement. Then she looked directly at Elon Wright as she delivered the next lines. You can try to name my limits, try to tell me where I stand, but my worth isn't yours to measure. My voice isn't yours to command. It wasn't confrontational, it was declarative, a simple statement of truth. Wright shifted in his seat, the first crack in his composed facade. As Aaliyah built toward the bridge, her voice revealed new facets, delicate runs that nodded to her R&B influences, soulful inflections that honored her musical lineage without falling into expected patterns. The technical elements were flawless, but they served the emotion rather than showcasing technique for its own sake. The bridge arrived with a moment of near silence, just her voice alone. In the space between the silence and the words I choose to say, there's a power you can't diminish. There's a self you can't erase. She took the melody up an octave, her voice finding a crystalline quality that raised goosebumps across the audience. So I'll stand in my truth now. I'll claim every note as mine. This song was always inside me, I just needed to decide. A sustained high note hung in the air, perfectly controlled, vibrating with emotion. In that moment, several audience members leaned forward unconsciously, drawn by something beyond technical skill, the universal recognition of authenticity revealing itself. As she moved into the final chorus, Aaliyah's voice fully unleashed, no longer constrained by any lingering caution. I am more than your assumptions, more than names you give to me. I am voice. I am vision. I am all you'll never see. I am writing my own story now, pages you don't get to hold. I am fire. I am freedom. I am breaking from your mold. The control remained perfect, but now it contained multitudes, echoes of gospel power, jazz sophistication, soul's emotional depth, pop's accessibility. It wasn't a fusion of styles. It was the natural expression of her complete musical identity. The renowned producer had opened his eyes again, now studying Aaliyah with the focused attention of someone recognizing rare potential. The radio host judge was nodding continuously, a smile spreading across his face. Aaliyah brought the final chorus to its peak, her voice climbing to a powerful crescendo. I am more than your assumptions. I am all that I contain. I am voice that won't be silenced. I am joy. I am pain. I am writing my own story now. She held the note on now, letting it transform and evolve, revealing technical mastery that even trained vocalists would envy. Then, unexpectedly, she brought the volume down for the final lines, her voice intimate again but carrying an unmistakable strength. You can't silence what was born to be heard. You can't unwrite what was always my word. The last note lingered, pure and unwavering as the piano faded. Complete silence followed. For 3 full seconds, not a single person moved or breathed. The moment crystallized a perfect stillness that acknowledged something extraordinary had occurred. In that suspended moment, Aaliyah stood centered in the spotlight, no longer seeming small or uncertain. Her posture had transformed, shoulders back, head high, a physical manifestation of the journey contained in her song. The silence held meaning beyond the absence of sound. It was recognition, recalibration, respect. The room collectively processing what they had witnessed. Even Elon Wright sat motionless, his usual restless energy stilled. The confidence that had seemed so unshakable minutes earlier had vanished, replaced by something that, if not humility, at least approached uncertainty. Cameron, watching from the wings, had lost all pretense of casual indifference. His expression cycled through confusion, surprise, and finally, reluctant admiration. Miss Morris's eyes glistened in the dim audience light, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Darius sat frozen, a wide smile splitting his face. The famous producer leaned over to whisper something to the radio host, who nodded emphatically in response. Aaliyah took a breath, the microphone capturing the soft sound in the still, silent auditorium. She had revealed something true, not just about her talent, but about herself, about the space she deserved to occupy in the world. Whatever happened next, that truth couldn't be unmade. The final note hung in the air, a question waiting to be answered. In the front row, Elon Wright's face had lost its characteristic smugness. For perhaps the first time in years, he looked genuinely surprised, caught off guard by his miscalculation. He had sought to diminish someone he assumed was small, only to discover she contained multitudes he couldn't have imagined. The woman at the back of the auditorium had resumed recording, her phone capturing the extraordinary aftermath of the performance. Her professional demeanor had slipped, replaced by visible excitement. Throughout the audience, people remained suspended in that rare moment when art transcends entertainment and becomes truth. Parents who had been checking emails looked up. Teenagers who had been scrolling through social media set their phones down. Industry professionals who had seen countless performances leaned forward. Aaliyah remained still, her song completed, but its effects still rippling through the space. In her mind, she heard her grandmother's voice. Don't give them power they haven't earned. She hadn't. Instead, she had claimed her own. The final echoes of the piano faded entirely, leaving pure silence. For 3 full seconds after she finished, not a single person moved or breathed. And then, from the third row, a single person stood. Miss Morris, her usual professional reserve abandoned, rose to her feet, hands coming together in deliberate, measured applause. The sound broke the spell, releasing the collective tension in a wave. The first solitary applause from Miss Morris hung in the air for only a moment, before it multiplied. Like a wave building strength, it spread outward, first Darius, then students nearby, then parents, then entire rows rising in unison. The famous producer stood abruptly, his applause emphatic and deliberate. The radio host followed, then the third judge. Throughout the auditorium, people rose to their feet, their faces reflecting genuine amazement rather than polite appreciation. Only Elon Wright remained seated, his expression caught between disbelief and calculation. The thunderous ovation continued around him, making his stillness increasingly conspicuous. Cameron, still in the wings, stared at his father, waiting for a cue on how to react. Aaliyah stood in the center of the storm, her composure intact but her eyes wide with surprise. This wasn't the polite applause other contestants had received. This was recognition, pure, spontaneous, and overwhelming. The standing ovation lasted nearly 30 seconds, showing no signs of diminishing. Wright finally stood, his movement stiff, his applause perfunctory. The contrast between his mechanical response and the audience's genuine enthusiasm couldn't have been more stark. The famous producer Dominic Rivera of Atlantic Records whispered something to the radio host, who nodded and gestured to the stage manager. It was a departure from protocol, but the stage manager didn't hesitate. Rivera left the judges' table and walked directly to the stage, still applauding. The audience's reaction intensified at this unprecedented move. Industry professionals never approached contestants during the competition portion that was for the award ceremony after all performances concluded. Aaliyah watched him approach, her heart beat loud in her ears despite the roaring applause. Rivera reached for the secondary microphone typically reserved for announcements. "I apologize for the interruption," he said, his voice carrying the polished cadence of someone accustomed to public speaking. "But I've been judging talent competitions for 15 years, and I've never felt compelled to do this before." The audience quieted, sensing something significant was unfolding. What we just witnessed transcends the parameters of a high school talent show. Rivera turned to Aaliyah. That was professional caliber artistry, not just technically, but emotionally. You didn't just sing notes, you communicated truth. Fresh applause erupted, punctuated by whistles and cheers. The depth of your vocal control, the mixed voice transitioning to head voice on those high Gs, the deliberate use of texture and dynamics, these are qualities that can't be taught. Rivera spoke with the precision of someone who knew music intimately. But more importantly, you have that indefinable quality that separates performers from artists. Wright shifted his weight, visibly uncomfortable with the direction events had taken. The competition structure he'd expected, with himself as the central authority, had been disrupted. Rivera turned to the audience. "I've sat through countless performances by extensively trained, expensively packaged young artists who have everything except the one thing that matters most. Something genuine to say." He gestured toward Aaliyah. "This is what authenticity sounds like." Wright cleared his throat and stepped forward, reclaiming his position at the center of attention. "I think we're all impressed by the raw potential on display." His tone suggested he was generously overlooking flaws. "With proper training and guidance, there might be commercial possibilities." "With respect, Elon," Rivera interrupted, something he likely wouldn't have done an hour earlier. "This isn't potential. This is presence. This is artistry that's already fully realized." Wright's jaw tightened. The power dynamic had shifted visibly. His authority as the wealthiest person in the room, suddenly less relevant than Rivera's expertise in the actual field being judged. Perhaps we should hear from the contestant herself, the radio host suggested, offering Aaliyah the primary microphone. All eyes turned to her. The spotlight that had felt so exposing earlier now felt different, like illumination rather than interrogation. "Thank you," she said simply. Her voice remained steady, without the nervous tremor from earlier. "Music has always been my truth. Tonight is the first time I've shared that truth publicly." Wright attempted to regain control, stepping to the front of the judge's table. "Well, I think we can all agree it was a memorable performance." His tone suggested he was making a concession. "And as promised, I'll add $2,000 to your prize if you win." Aaliyah looked directly at him, her posture straight, her gaze level. "Mister." "Right, I meant what I said before. I'm not here for your money. I'm here to be heard." The audience's response was immediate, applause mixed with murmurs of approval. Wright's attempt to maintain their relationship as benefactor and recipient had failed publicly. Rivera turned to Wright, his expression professionally neutral but his voice firm. "I think we all need to acknowledge what happened here, Elon." He glanced toward the audience. "Before Miss Johnson performed, there were some unfortunate comments made." Wright's expression hardened. "I was providing constructive criticism." "You were making assumptions," Rivera corrected, his tone remaining professional. "Assumptions that have now been thoroughly disproven." The audience's attentive silence carried a clear message. They had witnessed everything and understood exactly what Rivera was referencing. "In my professional opinion," Rivera continued, "what we heard tonight wasn't just the best performance of this competition. It was one of the most authentic vocal performances I've heard from any unsigned artist in the past decade." More applause erupted, drowning out Wright's attempt to respond. When the noise subsided, Wright found himself in an unfamiliar position, required to acknowledge a mistake or risk appearing petty and tone-deaf. The calculation played across his face, visible to everyone watching. "Well," he finally said, adjusting his expression into a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "it seems I may have underestimated you, Ms. Johnson." The words came reluctantly, like objects pulled against their will. "Your performance was indeed impressive." It wasn't a genuine apology, but it was an unprecedented concession from a man known for never admitting error. The famous producer had never left his judging table in 3 seasons until now. His presence beside Aaliyah on stage transformed the narrative completely. This wasn't just a talent show winner. This was a professional discovery. In the wings, Cameron stared at his father, seeing him diminished for perhaps the first time. The friends who had laughed at Aaliyah earlier now looked uncertain, their social calculations visibly recalibrating. "Talent doesn't ask permission to exist," Rivera said into the microphone, the words emerging as a spontaneous observation rather than a planned statement. The phrase hung in the air, immediately recognized for its truth. Several audience members nodded, some repeating it to neighbors. The woman recording in the back smiled, knowing she had captured something that would resonate beyond this room. When they handed the microphone back to Wright, every camera in the room turned to capture his response. The man who had arrived as the unquestioned authority now stood exposed not as a talent expert, but as someone who had failed to recognize excellence when it didn't match his preconceptions. What she said next would be replayed on social media millions of times by morning. "The winners will be announced after a short intermission," the radio host announced, stepping in to restore structure to the disrupted program. But everyone already knew the outcome. The remaining contestants exchanged glances backstage, a mix of disappointment and acceptance. How could anyone follow what they had just witnessed? Aaliyah walked off stage, her legs suddenly unsteady now that the moment had passed. The backstage area parted for her, not with the dismissive indifference of earlier, but with something approaching reverence. That was... Darius appeared at her side, shaking his head in amazement. "I don't even have words." Miss Morris joined them, her usual professional demeanor softened by undisguised pride. "I always knew," she said simply, "from the first time I heard you humming in the practice room last year." Rivera approached with a business card extended. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "Not about developing your talent, you've clearly done that work already. About introducing it to the world properly." Aaliyah accepted the card, her fingers still trembling slightly from adrenaline. Other industry professionals hovered nearby, clearly waiting for their opportunity to speak with her. The most surprising person to approach her backstage was Cameron Wright himself. He separated from his friends, approaching with uncharacteristic hesitation. "I just wanted to say," he began, then stopped, reconsidering his words. That was incredible, actually incredible. The admission seemed to cost him something, but his expression held genuine respect. "I've had vocal coaches since I was 8, and I've never sounded like that." "Thank you," Aaliyah replied, the simple acknowledgement containing neither triumph nor resentment. Across the room, Elon Wright stood with the school principal, his body language stiff. He gestured emphatically, perhaps attempting to reassert control in some smaller sphere since he had lost it in the larger one. Social media was already exploding. Phones throughout the venue displayed notifications as the video of Wright's condescension followed by Aaliyah's performance began circulating. Comments poured in by the hundreds, then thousands. By morning, the video would reach places Aaliyah had never imagined. The judges' deliberation was the shortest in the competition's history. When they returned from intermission, the announcement felt like a formality rather than a revelation. Aaliyah Johnson had won unanimously. Even Elon Wright had voted for her. He had no other choice. 1 week after the talent show, Aaliyah sat in Atlantic Records' Los Angeles studio, still adjusting to how quickly her life had changed. The professional microphone before her looked nothing like the school's basic equipment, but it represented the same opportunity to be heard. "Ready when you are," the sound engineer said through her headphones. Aaliyah nodded, gathering herself in the moment before music began. The past 7 days had been a whirlwind that still seemed half dream, half reality. The video had indeed gone viral by morning after the competition. A 3-minute clip capturing Wright's dismissive comments, Aaliyah's dignified responses, and her subsequent performance had reached millions of viewers within 48 hours. The narrative had proven irresistible, arrogant billionaire, humbled by the authentic talent he had attempted to diminish. The story had been picked up by national outlets, framed as everything from a David and Goliath tale to a commentary on recognizing talent in unexpected places. "You can't silence her" had trended for 2 consecutive days. Her phone notification showed another email from Juilliard's admission office, following up on their scholarship offer. 3 prestigious music schools had reached out within days of the video circulating, expressing interest in her unique voice and perspective. But it was Rivera's offer that had seemed most aligned with her goals, a development deal that emphasized artistic control and authentic expression rather than commercial packaging. "We want to amplify your voice, not reshape it," he had explained during their first meeting. That kind of authenticity is what the industry actually needs right now. Aaliyah set her phone aside, focusing on the moment. The recording session today would create professional versions of 3 original songs, including Unwritten, which had already received unofficial remix treatments from producers online. The most unexpected outcome had been the shift at West Valley Arts Academy itself. Students who had previously seen her as invisible now approached with congratulations and conversation. Teachers who had overlooked her quiet presence now sought her contributions in class. Cameron Wright had undergone the most visible transformation. The competition loss, coupled with witnessing his father's public miscalculation, seemed to have initiated genuine reflection. Yesterday, he had approached Aaliyah in the hallway. "I'm starting a student initiative to bring performers from different schools together," he had explained, the entitled tone notably absent from his voice. We have resources a lot of public school arts programs don't. Would you help me set it up to make sure it's actually helpful and not just, performative? The genuine uncertainty in his question suggested growth that Aaliyah hadn't anticipated. Even more surprisingly, the school had received an anonymous donation earmarked specifically for expanding arts education accessibility, a substantial sum directed toward scholarships for talented students from underrepresented backgrounds. The timing made the source fairly obvious, though Elon Wright had made no public statement about the incident since a brief "congratulations to all participants" social media post the day after. Aaliyah's grandmother had simply nodded when hearing about the donation. Redemption takes many forms, she had observed. Some people can only find their way to doing right by taking the long route. Inspired by this thought, Aaliyah had made her own decision. With Rivera's guidance, she had established the framework for a small foundation supporting young musicians without access to formal training or equipment, offering studio time, mentorship, and performance opportunities. The first year would be modest, but the groundwork was laid for something sustainable. Some voices can't be silenced, they just need the right microphone. That had become her unofficial motto, appearing in her social media bio and quoted in the 2 interviews she had given so far. In the studio booth, Rivera gave her a thumbs up as the introduction began playing through her headphones. Aaliyah closed her eyes, finding the center of herself as she had on stage that night. The voice that emerged was the same authentic, powerful, uniquely hers, but now it carried something new, the confidence of having been truly heard. As she sang the opening lines of Unwritten, Aaliyah thought about all the voices still waiting for their moment, all the stories yet to be shared. Her victory wasn't just personal, it was a doorway for others to walk through. That was the true power of what had happened, not simply that she had been recognized, but that the recognition created space for others like her. Some moments of silence are meant to be broken. Some stories refuse to remain unwritten. That moment when silence turns to applause, that's what we deliver. Every story on our channel is crafted for the overlooked voices that deserve to be heard. Real emotion, real talent, real consequences. If Aaliyah's journey from mockery to triumph moved you, hit that subscribe button now. We deliver fresh status flip narratives weekly, where underdogs rise, talent speaks, and powerful moments change lives forever. Like this video. If you've ever been underestimated, share with someone who needs to hear this message today. Subscribe for more authentic stories that cut through the noise. Drop a comment with your own silence to strength moment. Every voice matters here.